This week's question was, how does Aquinas understand marriage to be a potential impediment to Christian perfection? And do I agree? It's first important to define what is meant by the phrase Christian perfection in Aquinas' mind. To him, it means to love God to the utmost possible. And there's two aspects to this love, two ways that this can be done, two focuses. The first of which is based in the object loved. And that object, of course, is God. God is infinite goodness, and hence he is infinitely lovable. However, man, as a finite creature, cannot perform an infinite act, and therefore cannot love God infinitely. Therefore, we have to approach it from the other aspect, being based in the subject loving, which the subject being us, being man. Man can attempt to love God to the best of his power. That means loving God with his whole soul, loving all things in God, his whole heart, ordering his life to God, his whole mind, subjecting his intellect to God, and his whole strength, deriving all of his external acts from divine love. There are three key instruments to this Christian perfection. Those are poverty, chastity, and obedience. For our discussion today, I'm going to be focusing on chastity, the giving up of the good of marriage. Now, marriage is definitely a good, and it's a good to which many people are called. A good because it's a good based in charity. But it carries with it certain duties, certain obligations, and even certain pleasures that together can distract the mind, occupy the heart, and really drain the strength. This includes procreation and the education of children, support of the spouse, and the myriad other mundane activities that are necessary to support a household. Now, this significant drain on time and focus means that this time and this energy cannot be spent on devoting yourself to God. Aquinas makes his feelings on this matter very, very clear and is on the perfection of the spiritual life. He talks about earthly affections and passions warping and blunting the mind. He also talks about the married man is anxious about worldly affairs and how to please his wife, quoting St. Gregory and St. Paul, respectively. He tells us that the inclination of the married is to place temporal riches and spouses above God, and therefore they run the risk of performing married tasks to God. Consecrated virgins, on the other hand, because they don't have these myriad of tasks, these married tasks to worry about, they have a lesser temptation in this regard. So what does this mean? Well, it means by abstaining from marriage, it may be easier to follow a life of detachment due to the possibility of more time for prayer and charitable works, just like Aquinas is saying. There are a couple of significant challenges to this, though. Challenge number one is that some single people who are busy with their own responsibilities just don't make the time for prayer and charitable works. And while some married people are much more successful in achieving their spiritual perfection. The second is that there's an apparent degradation of marriage via the teaching of the objective superiority of the celibate life. How do we resolve this? The first way is to remember that we're all called to love God via our own particular vocation. The other is to also remember that celibacy is a meaningful step to spiritual perfection only because marriage is held in high regard. It's the giving up of this great good that is the step, that is makes it a good instrument for this. And interestingly, that marriage itself might become a springboard to perfection, because the death of a spouse can be a source of meritorious suffering, which can then be turned to and help draw a person closer to God and to be that truly a springboard into spiritual perfection. Thank you.